So now we're going to go to State Senator Richard Black, who I believe is now connected with us. I think everybody here should be familiar with him. He is an American patriot of the highest order, and he has recently returned from Syria, where he held discussions with the president of that nation. And he has, as he has always done for the last several meetings of ours, made himself available today to give us remarks. So, Senator Black.
Hey, how are you? It's very good to be with you. I am just back from Syria. I was there from the 1st through the 9th, and it was a tremendous trip. I covered a great deal of the country. I went all the way from Damascus to Aleppo and to other places in between. It is interesting. This was the second trip that I've taken. I was over there 2 years ago, and at the time, I went to the city of Palmyra. Palmyra had just been liberated from ISIS, and so I paid the visit, and shortly afterwards, ISIS counterattacked, and they seized Palmyra once again. Things have changed enormously. I met for 3 hours with President Bashar al-Assad, who, contrary to mainstream media, is an extremely rational, highly intelligent, and I think very decent individual. He was really almost joyous. He felt that peace was at hand. A feeling that was shared by people just across the country, everywhere that I spoke, whether I was talking with shepherds out in the desert. They were all so delighted that the terrorists have been driven from Syria in almost every area, and they were looking at returning to peace, having the refugees, having their relatives return, and then rebuilding the country. So this was the spirit. You can see the country being rebuilt all over. And I'll tell you this: the security. I had very, very light security, even though I traveled, for 5 miles through open areas. Had very light security, and previously, when I traveled, I had to have a 12-vehicle convoy with 3 automatic cannons and air support, attack helicopters, and a MiG jet. This time, just I had 1 carload of troops, and I don't think they were probably the elite Secret Service of Syria. And so anyway, tremendous change, tremendous positive change. So everything was going well while I was over there. Subsequently, what has happened is that the remaining terrorists, the worst of the worst, have been trapped in Idlib province. They are under the general command of a fellow named al-Julani. Al-Julani is he is the top commander of al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda in Syria. Now, just to remind your listeners there, Al-Qaeda was the group that flew the planes into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on 9/11 and killed 3,000 Americans. So the commander of this force is al-Julani. He also is a major commander for ISIS in Nineveh province. And so he has taken command of Idlib province, where a great battle is looming. The Syrian army has surrounded it and are set to move in and to crush the greatest terror army on earth. The civilians within Idlib are desperate to be liberated. Many of them have escaped and gotten out. The Christians there are being ferreted out and beheaded whenever they can be detected. And they talk about the families of the terrorists, and they say, well, you know, we have to show great sympathy towards the terrorists' families. What we need to recognize is that typically the wife of a terrorist is a slave. She has been captured in battle, and the rule that the terrorists follow is that a woman who is captured, that she, her daughters, her children are sex slaves, and they are traded back and forth among the terrorists. So here we are. I think I and the rest of the world, the rest of the informed world, are shocked that here we are right around the time of the anniversary of 9/11, and we have thrown our full diplomatic and military weight in support of Al-Qaeda. We are now fighting shoulder to shoulder with ISIS and with Al-Qaeda, and we are putting out these wild claims that there's going to be a Syrian gas attack, another one of these false flag gas attacks. And so just recently, One America News did an excellent article, and they actually were able to get some of the footage that has been prepared of a fake gas attack, and it has been released to certain media outlets, and they will be told when they are to release this film of this supposed gas attack. I think it's a tragedy. I think I wish that the people in New York City whose families died on 9/11 understood that we are now fighting, struggling. John Bolton is going around the world enlisting the support of the world to attack Syria and to defend Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. So this is the situation that we face today. It is a bizarre situation, something that no American would ever expect after the trauma of 9/11. And so I'm hoping that as we get the word out, we make it more difficult for the deep state to engage us in an escalation of this 7-year painful, brutal war in Syria. Thank you very much. Oh.
We can, let's see, it's now 3:15. We can, is Senator Black staying with us here for a moment, or is he off? What is the story? Oh, he's there. Oh, you are there. Okay, very good. So we can entertain 1 or 2 questions for him if anyone has anything immediately to address to him.
Comment. I'd like to mention one other thing. One of the policies that has been followed by President Assad has been reconciliation, and the idea is that there's actually a Bureau of Reconciliation, and they talk with rebels in various towns, and they get them to surrender their weapons and so forth. And in exchange, they're given amnesty. Those who have not fought on behalf of the Syrian army actually join and fight on the front lines. I was extremely skeptical. When I first heard of this, I thought all they're going to do is they're going to act as though they're going along with it, and as soon as the opportunity arises, they'll stab the Syrian army in the back. In fact, the people of Syria have so turned against the war, and so they've had experience now with these foreign jihadists that we have recruited from all around the world. The United States recruits them, arms them, trains them, sends them off, and they man Al Qaeda, they man ISIS, and many of these towns that that joined the early revolution have said, this stinks. This is not what we want. We want the old Syria that we had before. And so from all reports that I can obtain, reconciliation has been a resounding success. And so it has pacified the country. And for this reason, I was able to stop at obscure places. We'd be out in the desert and need to make a rest stop, and there'd be some little shanty, some fellow who would be growing a few olive trees and eking out a living, and we'd stop there. We weren't there to question them or to interrogate them. We were there to use the restroom, honestly. And but they would volunteer, and they would say, we are so delighted that the terrorists have been driven out, and we want to express our gratitude to President Bashar al-Assad. I have heard this from peasants, from people who sweep streets, who clean toilets for a living, all the way up to members of parliament. And I met with the head of the parliament and with a good portion of the parliament of Syria. And I will tell you something that the mainstream media won't tell you, is that the parliament has a substantial number of women who are the top legislators. We're always told that, oh, the Sunnis don't have any authority. And the fact of the matter is that the president's wife is a Sunni, and she is very powerful, not only nationally, but within her own family. The president's principal media and political advisor is Sunni. The Grand Mufti, who is the top Sunni authority in Syria and surrounding locations, is an ardent supporter of the president. Most of the Syrian generals are Sunni. Most of the top officials in government are Sunni. And so this whole myth that was created as part of the justification for going to war was somehow we needed to sort out which religious group would control the country. So I just wanted to point out that the reconciliation has been a very surprising, to me, a very surprising success, and the country has clearly come together. There is enormous unity, and I think there's probably not a politician in this country that would not die to have the popularity ratings of the president of Syria.
Okay, gentleman over here.
Thank you, Senator. I'm just wondering if the question that was asked during September 11, if someone like Bin Laden and his group, living thousands of miles away from the United States, were able to coordinate 3 different attacks in New York, Washington, and without an internal assistance. By listening to you now and telling us the United States is fighting shoulder to shoulder with Bin Laden and others, That raises a very serious question. Even the attack in our land in September 11 is coordinated with Bin Laden and some other people. Is that question a legitimate question, you think, or just coincidence? Thank you.
Well, I think it's an excellent question. I'm always very careful to speak only in terms of proven, established facts. But I will tell you this, that on 9/11, the United States was attacked by Saudi Arabia. We know that of the attackers, of the 19 attackers, they were almost all Saudi Arabians. And we know also that unlike the idea that it's simply a group of disgruntled individuals who decided on doing this, that they received their support, their living expenses, all of their logistical support was provided by senior officials of the Saudi Arabian government. We also know one very interesting fact, and that is, if you will recall, for the first time in American history, right after 9/11, the president ordered that all commercial aviation would be grounded. The first exception that was ever made to that was to allow a passenger jet to go airborne, and this was at the request of the Saudi Arabian government, and they traveled around the United States picking up relatives of Osama bin Laden and also key Saudi officials, and they whisked them out of the United States before they could be interrogated by authorities. We also know that when the 9/11 Commission was performing its work, they did very good work, they were very diligent in what they did, that they were stonewalled by the FBI and by other government agencies, where they obviously had been told, tell the 9/11 Commission as little as possible. So those are facts that I know. I won't speculate on who other than the Saudi Arabians attacked the United States. I will tell you for a fact that the United States on 9/11 was not attacked by Iraq. It was not attacked by Libya. It was not attacked by Syria. It was not attacked by Yemen. It was not attacked by Iran. Arguably, the attack had some association with Afghanistan, but I don't believe it was the Afghan government. I think it was simply Afghanistan happened to be a Wild West place where they could establish a training camp for Al-Qaeda, and the direction came from outside of Afghanistan. So I think all of the places that we have attacked since then have been places that had no connection with 9/11 whatsoever.
Thank you, Senator. I'm a great admirer of your work and your courage. My question is, how can we find you an audience with President Trump? Thank you.
This is an interesting question. You know, after President Trump was elected, during the campaign, I met the advisors to him that dealt with issues regarding Russia, Syria, other foreign policy matters. These were great people. I will tell you, if they were at your conference today, you would admire every single one of them. The one that emerged as the most prominent and most qualified individual was General Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn was a man of peace. He was a man who had been the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, probably the cleanest of all of our intelligence agencies. He knew where all of the skeletons were buried. He knew the folly of our policy in many instances, and he also understood diplomacy. He understood that you can't always do what you want exactly the way that you want it. I don't want to overstate this because you know, he would not mark me among his dear friends or anything of that sort, but we exchanged a series of texts, and the last text is he said, you and I have to get together within the next week. And I said, fine. I said, let's do that. And then, not having anything to do with me, the deep state, when he was made the national security advisor, which is the individual who meets most frequently during the day with the president. When Michael Flynn became the NSA, this set off panic alarms with the deep state, because these are people whose wealth, whose fame, whose prominence all derives from the continuation of wars. And so he had to be removed. And from the little that I know, and I don't have any insider knowledge, but it appears as though the FBI threatened to bring criminal charges against his son. As a good soldier would do, he threw himself in the line of fire to protect his family, and he agreed that he would plead guilty to some nonsense that would satisfy them. He is a man of enormous honor. I hope that the president at some point will pardon him for whatever he's done. We know that that Papadopoulos was just given this 14-day sentence. It probably cost us $20 million to put him in there. And I'd like to make an offer right now that if they would like to put me in prison for 14 days and just simply pay me the 10 or 20 million dollars, I'll just sign up and say, yeah, I jaywalked on such and such day, and they can do that. But the objective, the reason that Michael Flynn was the first individual who was removed from office was the threat that he posed to the deep state. He was the one person who could have informed Donald Trump, and since then, an increasingly bellicose group have surrounded the president, and now you have John Bolton, a bloodthirsty draft dodger, which is an ironic phrase, but he dodged the Vietnam draft, and now he calls for war. He wants millions of people to die, and I find that rather ironic as somebody who shed his blood in Vietnam for the country, for what I believed in at the time. We also have Nikki Haley, and I proposed today to a friend of mine that perhaps we should have the Nikki Haley Award, which would be a necklace with atomic bombs decorating it, because every time she speaks, she's supposedly a diplomat, but you never hear her speak when she is not threatening somebody with war or sanctions or some sort of bullying action. And so the president, unfortunately, is surrounded by a tight circle, and I'm not sure how much information is permitted to get to him. But I would love if he had alternative points of view and not simply the views of the deep state. But unfortunately, I think that's where he is right now.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Hi, Senator Black. My name is Daniel Burke. I am an activist with the Schiller Institute and also with the LaRouche Political Action Committee. And I really want to sincerely thank you for providing an example of true statesmanship to the United States and to the world, and giving us your essential insights. And I want to, in particular, ensure that everyone here is a part of what you are doing, what the Schiller Institute is doing, what other groups, including the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, are doing, which is to fight back against this false flag, which has been organized by the British intelligence services, the same group that is initiated the attacks on President Trump, as going back to the December 2015 meeting between Hannigan, the head of the British GCHQ, and John Brennan, when they sketched out much of what has become Russiagate, this absurd witch hunt. So I really want to encourage everyone here, my fellow participants in this conference, to take immediate action. There are obvious steps that every person can take, every U.S. citizen, every person here can take to encourage as much political action as possible to prevent this from going forward. And I would like to ask you, sir, what we would say from the standpoint of a successful mobilization. What should we accomplish?
Sometimes people ask me, they say, you know, I just wish we could get the president, we could get this one or that one to come on our side. And President Assad is a very bright guy, and he understands, and I think he realizes that we discussed this. There are three groups. You have the top federal officials, and they really are immovable. We have a couple of people who have spoken out, Tom Garrett, congressman, and Tulsi Gabbard, and there were others. Rand Paul, of course, is a tremendous hero of this. And but by and large, as an institution, the Congress is immovable, and of course you've got ordinary citizens who would not be able to find Syria on the map and might not know what continent it lies in or anything about it. But in between, you have this broad group, and I describe it very roughly as the foreign policy elite. Now, that's a vast overstatement, because I'm including really anybody who has an interest in foreign policy, who takes note of things that are said about what's going on in the Middle East. And this is the group that I think we can best influence, and we can, through them, we have our best chance of moderating the American, just this terrible, incessant desire to topple and bring about a coup in Syria, overthrow the duly elected government, the government recognized by the United Nations, and we want to overthrow it and replace it with Al-Qaeda or some similar group under the control of Saudi Arabia, which will then butcher the 2 million Christians, the 2 million Alawites, who are known as the Friends of the Christians because they're very westernized and modernized. There will be a bloodbath of epic proportions if we succeed, and if we overthrow the legitimate government of Syria and put in place a puppet government hated by the people. It would be a Quisling government, just like Hitler put a Quisling in charge of Norway during the Second World War, and the people despised him. So I think what we need to do, we need to get the word out about the false flag gas attack so that we blunt it when it finally is pulled off, and people realize, okay, this is This is what they told us about. I heard about it a couple of weeks ago. Here it is. Yeah, it's a fake. I was told it was a fake, and here it is. It's just like they told us. So I think that's right now, this is the biggest single thing that we can do.
Thank you very much.